This next award is for coverage of the Boston Marathon bombings. Two local stations, one on TV, one on the radio, did exemplary coverage of the bombings from start to finish.
Well, Bobby, we were standing at the finish line and we were reporting some of the folks that were coming across the line and looking for some of the folks that we've done stories on in the past. And the three of us were sitting there. Seth was producing, Brian Foley was the photographer, and I was standing. The three of us were sort of high-fiving some of the runners coming across, and all of a sudden, maybe 25 feet away from us, right across the street, this huge blast and a big cloud of smoke. And, you know, we didn't know exactly what it was initially. I mean, all our heads were ringing, and then maybe just a few seconds later, another blast 2 blocks up on the same side of the street of Boylston. And all of a sudden, it became very clear what was going on. There wasn't a manhole cover explosion. This was intentional. This was a bomb.
WBEZ TV news anchor Lisa Hughes will accept the Peabody Award.
Nothing was more important to us than getting this story right in a community that was grieving and still in shock. And immediately after those explosions, those horrific acts, we saw the best in people. From the heroes who raced to those blast sites not knowing if there were other bombs, to the medical teams that saved every wounded person to make it to a hospital, the police, the runners who came back in even bigger numbers for this year's Boston Marathon, and the victims' families and the survivors who are an inspiration every single day. From our entire WBZ family to all of them, we say, thank you for trusting us to share your stories. Thank you.
Best Kept Secret is about a high school for special needs students in Newark that does such a good job at what they do that administrators, when you call the school, administrators pick up the phone and say, you've reached John F. Kennedy High School, Newark's Best Kept Secret. The film follows one teacher, Janet Mino, who is trying to get a class of 6 autistic boys to graduate. She knows that the way it works is that when they're 21, they can't attend JFK anymore. And so she's trying to find them a place in the adult world, either a job or something in a placement program, a placement in an adult program, so they don't wind up where kids like them often do, which is sitting at home or in an institution or just out on the street.
Oh, come on. Somebody, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So we're going to talk about transition. Okay. We're going to have a discussion about what happens with our students once they leave here, and particularly since your entire class is graduating. One of the biggest problems that we have for students with autism is there's not a whole lot of resources post-high school. So they have like a day recreational program where the kids just come and do activities, and then they have a work program. But it's not anything what I would consider, you know, a standard traditional job.
Here to accept is Director Samantha Buck.
Well, geez, thank you to the Peabody Award and the University of Georgia for this really unbelievable and an incredible honor. Thank you to our amazing producer, Danielle DiGiacomo, to PBS and POV for giving this film a home. Thank you. We want to give a special thanks to our families, our friends, our funders, our supporters, Senator Robert Menendez and his office, Newark Public Schools, JFK High School, all the families that let us into their lives and their homes, and this amazing woman. She's unbelievable. And we are so excited for your next chapter, Mino. You are the inspiration, and we would like to dedicate this to a group of young men who we affectionately call the guys from her class, who taught us and everyone that everyone deserves a chance at a quality of life. So, to the guys.
A number of Peabody winners shed light on complex global issues. Here they are. The BBC World News did vivid, on-the-ground coverage of Syria's civil war that captured the horrific realities of that conflict. Reporters traveled with both sides in the war, both with the rebels and the government troops. And they filmed children hiding in a cave who were waiting for their mom to come back. They filmed civilians screaming, covered with burns from a chemical attack. They risked their lives to give the world an up-close look at what was really happening in Syria.
The battles raged from shop to shop, from house to house, street to street. Most people fled or are dead. In the heart of Qusair, there's little life in the main square, aside from the troops. The iconic clock tower is still standing, but only just. A new flag was raised early this morning. For nearly a year, Qusair was under rebel control. Today, government troops are marking their victory loudly.
Former Middle East Bureau Chief Paul Danaher is here to accept the Peabody.
We'd like to thank the Peabody Board for honouring us with this award. The BBC has dedicated enormous resources to Syria. It is the tragedy of our age, and so little is being done to end it. We, as journalists, have all of us actually involved in covering this conflict, have spent many hours and months and days away from our families. I'd like to acknowledge those in our team who've done the most. My colleagues Andrew Roy, Kate Farrell behind me, producers Sarah Halfpenny, Richard Colborn, Rachel Thompson, Kate Benyon-Tinker, Lena Antaki, Lena Sinjab, Mugira Al-Sharif, and correspondents Paul Wood, Lise Doucette, Jeremy Bowen, Fred Scott, Darren Conway, and my colleague Phil Goodwin, who's walking around with bits of shrapnel inside him to show just how close we are getting to the conflict, unfortunately. And I'd like to introduce my colleague Ian Pannell to say a few words. He spent most of his, last year of his life on the front lines.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Paul. Thanks to the University of Georgia for this truly great honour, not just for recognising the work of the BBC in Syria, but also a story that's been largely ignored and forgotten by the outside world. I was in Aleppo just a couple of weeks ago watching government helicopters dump barrel bombs on residential neighbourhoods and fighter jets attacking civilian areas. And when you used to go to Syria, people would ask you, when will help come? They couldn't believe that the outside world could possibly watch what was happening and not respond. But as we know, that's exactly what's happened. I think I've long since abandoned the hope, perhaps the illusion, that people could watch our reporting and that it might influence policy. But we keep returning to Syria and we keep putting it on the news because although people may choose to ignore what's happening, nobody can say they didn't know. So I want to thank BBC News for continuing to allow us to report this story. I want to thank the teams who risk their lives every time they cross over the border, our families who wait and worry while we do. I would like to thank BBC World News America and the executive producer, Kate Farrell, for sticking with this story and putting it on the front pages, leading a news bulletin with a story that many others seem to have moved on from. This award is for those Syrians who allow us into their lives, often at their darkest moments, for the journalists who've been kidnapped and killed trying to report this story, for my colleagues who care enough to take the risk to go into Syria, and most importantly, for the brave Syrian fixers and translators, those we entrust our lives with, who don't have the gift of departure. Thank you, and in Arabic, shukran katir.
I love this next film, Beyond These Parts. In a way, it's like a Middle Eastern companion to Eugene Jarecki's movie about the drug war. Israeli judges who decide cases in the occupied territories talk about the unfairness and the injustice that is built into that system, sometimes with surprising candor. The clip you're about to see is part of the early setup of the film. It's a film with a very stylized visual look.
פעילותו של המשפטן סמויה מטבעה. היא מתנהלת בשפה שרובנו לא מבינים. עשייתם של גיבורי הסרט נשארה תמיד מאחורי הקלעים של האירועים המוכרים לכולנו, ולא זכתה לדעתי לחשיפה הראויה לה. עבודתם של אנשים אלו מעולם לא צולמה, אבל היא מתועדת במאות אלפי עמודים, צווים צבאיים, חוות דעת ופסקי דין שמספרים למי שקורא אותם את סיפורו של החוק של השטחים הכבושים.
Accepting the Peabody Award is producer Liran Atzmor.
Thank you. In Hebrew, we say Toda Rabba. We wish to thank PBS, POV, especially Simon Kilmery, for being the perfect home for this film. We also thank the Sundance Institute, the Foundation for Jewish Culture, and Ford Foundation for their support. Thank you, Director Ra'anan Alexandrovich, for the vision and persistence that was needed to create this film. Our ever-dependable co-producer, Laura Poitras. A few weeks ago, Secretary of State Kerry predicted that Israel will turn into an apartheid regime, even if he did immediately apologize. Our goal is to stress the urgency of Israel's making a clear choice of values, otherwise it is fated to fulfill this prophecy. Thank you.
Al Jazeera America's documentary Made in Bangladesh tries to capture what daily life is like in the factories that make clothes for Walmart and The Gap and all the others. And it investigates the 2012 fire that killed 112 garment workers at one of those firms, Tazreen Fashions.
Nothing can be worse than this. Nothing can be worse than this. Like seeing these people burned to ash and their family crying in front of you, and they cannot find they cannot identify these bodies, whether is their beloved or not. Nobody think about these human faces who are making clothes for them and dying in these factories every day.
Producer Laila Al-Arian will accept the Peabody.
Thank you so much to the Peabody Board and to the University of Georgia for this great honor, and thank you to Al Jazeera for giving us the opportunity to tell meaningful stories. Of course, this film would not have been possible without our amazing team. Anjali and I would like to thank our executive producer, Matt Skeen, who's really the visionary behind Fault Lines and the creator of the show. Thank you so much to our talented DPs, Tim Grucha and Andy Bally, and our brilliant editor, Warwick Mead. Thanks also to Paul Sapin and Joel Van Haren, and our excellent crew in Bangladesh, without whom this film would not have been possible. On this day, we're thinking about our colleagues imprisoned in Egypt for doing their jobs, reporting the news. Trying to silence people's voices will never work.
Thank you so much. This award is for the workers who were charred to death or badly injured jumping out of the burning Tazreen factory. You just saw some of their faces in that clip. A year and a half after the deadly fire, the survivors and the families of those who died are still waiting for compensation or even an apology from Walmart. The only reason they told us that many of them were in the factory late that evening when the fire broke out is because they were rushing to finish an order for Walmart. Walmart has refused to accept any responsibility for the workers' lives. We hope that the recognition this award brings will continue to shine a light on Bangladeshi garment workers, not simply as the cheapest labor force in the global garment industry, but as 4 million people struggling against great odds for justice and dignity. Thank you. Dhanyavad in Bangla.
Anthony Bourdain, Parts Unknown, is a great way to see the world, disguised as a food show.
Derailments, or rail slips as they are referred to here, a somewhat more benign sounding occurrence than, say, rolling off the tracks into a rice paddy, are not uncommon. And one can't help wondering what the engineer and conductor are thinking as the train speeds heedlessly on, faster and faster.
I mean, it must be, what, about 40, 50 miles per hour at this point.
Try pissing in the bathroom and find yourself launched straight up into the ceiling, bringing to a rude conclusion what was already an omnidirectional experience.
Host and executive producer Anthony Bourdain is here to accept the Peabody Award.
Thank you very much to the Peabody Board. We're incredibly honored and grateful, particularly in the light of the really amazing and inspiring stories and projects being honored here today. There is no story on my show. There's no way I could tell these. Look, we ask very simple questions. What makes you happy? What do you eat? What do you like to cook? And everywhere in the world we go and ask these very simple questions, we tend to get some really astonishing answers. I wouldn't be able to make the show. I wouldn't make the show or any show without my creative partners at 0.0, Lydia Tenalia, Chris Collins, all of Sandy Zweig, all of the incredible shooters, editors, and post-production people who make this wonderful and deeply satisfying project. And I want to thank CNN, Vinny Malotro, Amy Antelis, Lizzie Kerner, and particularly Jeff Zucker, who has been a steadfast friend and supporter right there with us from the beginning. We've handed some difficult and risky material to the network, and he has been a steadfast friend. Very, very grateful to CNN and to Jeff in particular. Thank you so much.
Peabody goes to the GMA networks in the Philippines for overcoming the challenges posed by the most powerful hurricane to ever hit their country or any country. 4.1 million people were displaced, over 1 million homes destroyed, for providing desperately needed spot news coverage and information at great danger often, and later stories of relief efforts and acts of heroism.
Unang rumusponde ang mga volunteers ng Philippine Red Cross kahit hindi rin sila sigurado sa inabot ng kani-kanila mga pamilya.
Yung ambulansya namin at saka yung service namin, inaanod. Lahat inaanod, pati mga relief goods namin na sana lahat. Ubus lahat. Kasi sa loob ng office, umabot ng hanggang 9 feet ang taas ng tubig.
Accepting the Peabody Award is Marissa Flores, Senior Vice President, GMA News and Public Affairs.
Thank you. Receiving this award is bittersweet for us at GMA Network because it is on the account of the suffering of Filipinos from Typhoon Haiyan or Yolanda, the strongest typhoon to have made landfall. But we accept this with immense gratitude on behalf of the people of GMA News and Public Affairs who risked their lives to tell the story. Thank you to the Peabody for honoring and inspiring GMA for the 4th time. This is for the survivors, the Filipinos, and our unsinkable spirit. Philippines, mabuhay.
And to continue what seems to be a new tradition here at the Peabodys, to the University of Georgia and the Peabody Awards, as we say in the Philippines, maraming salamat po.
After Haiti's 2010 earthquake, there was a cholera epidemic in the country. 500,000 people got cholera, 6,000 died, over 6,000 died. This documentary makes the case that the disease was probably brought to the country accidentally by UN workers who came in after the quake to help.
Outside the cemetery, cholera victims have gathered for a monthly meeting to discuss ways of dealing with the epidemic in their midst. Everyone at this meeting has either been infected with the disease or had a family member die. So how many people here actually know somebody that's died of cholera?
Producer and correspondent Sebastian Walker is here to accept the Peabody Award.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the Peabody Committee and the University of Georgia for this incredible honor. Some quick acknowledgements. I'm accepting this on behalf of our team, producer Singly Agnew, our Haiti producer Jeremy Dupin, our senior producer Carrie Lozano, our editor Warwick Mead, all of our colleagues at Al Jazeera and our senior executive team who supported our work so strongly. As Layla said, last but not least, our executive producer, Matt Skeen, whose vision and leadership is really the biggest reason why we're accepting a second award today for our show. We'd like to dedicate this award to two groups of people. First and foremost, to the Haitian families, the many thousands of Haitian families who've lost loved ones to the scourge of cholera, and those leading the fight for justice on their behalf. The second dedication, as Layla said, is to a group of our colleagues, one of whom is in fact a former Peabody winner and was standing up on this stage just 2 years ago. Peter Gresta is now languishing in a jail cell in Cairo, along with 3 other of our colleagues, one of whom is on hunger strike and now close to death. So Abdullah Al-Shami, Mohammed Fahmy, Berha Mohammed, and Peter Gresta, this is for you and for all journalists in prisons currently being held across the world. Thank you very much.
These next honorees, I'll attempt to right wrongs and get justice for people who have been denied it. The Pakistani children's series Burka Avenger takes the burqa, which usually hides a woman from view, and turns it into a superhero's mask, or a superheroine's mask. Basically, this is a show about female empowerment for an audience that is not getting that message from a lot of places. Its lead character is part Catwoman, part Muslim ideal, and it's a cartoon. Villains get defeated, it's fun. At the center of the action is a teacher who puts on a magical cape at night to right the wrongs around her, from child labor abuses to the ban on girls going to school.
और तो का क्या काम पढ़ाई से?
नहीं, ये स्कूल कैसे बंद कर सकते हैं? तालीम हमारी जरूरत है, हमारा हक है। आप हमारा ये हक नहीं छीन सकते। हम लोग ही इस मुल्क का मुस्तकबिल हैं। हम बच्चियां ही तो कल की माएँ हैं। हमें अपना मुस्तकबिल संवारने दें। हमारी जिंदगी तबाह करके क्या मिलेगा? माएँ अगर तालीम नहीं हासिल कर सकी, तो आगे की नस्लें भी जाहिल ही रह जाएंगी। हमें जहालत के अंधेरों में मत झोंको। तालीम के बगैर हम सब बर्बाद हैं।
Accepting the Peabody as director, creator, and producer, Aaron Harun Rashid.
Thank you so much. It's been a long journey to get here, and I mean that literally as well. It was a 20-hour flight from Pakistan. But thank you so much. This truly is a great honor to be recognized like this, and I want to thank the Peabody board. And this award goes to my incredibly talented team, Orphan Black in Pakistan, for making this incredibly beautiful show. And I also want to thank the many other people involved in making this happen. In this series, Burka Avenger fights for women empowerment and education for girls. She's a fictional character, yet she represents something very real in terms of the dreams and aspirations and challenges of the people of Pakistan and many around the world. She stands for justice, tolerance, peace, and education for all. And let me just say lastly, in my Pakistani language, thank you. Bahut bahut shukriya. Thank you.
The Invisible War does that thing of taking an issue that you've read about a little in the news and making you really feel a lot about it. It makes you mad when you see it. Sexual assault is so common in the US military. An estimated 26,000 female soldiers were assaulted in 2012 alone.
He said that if I told anybody that he was going to have his friend Marv from Indiana kill me and throw me in a ditch, because that's how they took care of things in Indiana.
She went to war and gave 9 years of her life. And for them to take it and come back and say, yes, they called you a whore. Yes, they called you a slut. Yes, they called you a walking mattress. It's documented over and over and over again. But you deserved it, and when you complained about it, you were welcoming it.
The actions of my seniors, both in the assault and in the ensuing investigations, have really destroyed me.
Director Kirby Dick is here to accept a Peabody.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to deeply thank Lois Vossen and ITVS, PBS, and CPB for their visionary leadership in championing this project over these past several years. Yeah, absolutely. They're fantastic. This award means so very much to me and to my fellow filmmakers, Amy Ziering and Tanner Barklow, and to our remarkable executive producers, two of whom, Maria Cuomo-Cole and Nicole Boxer, are here with us today. We accept this award on behalf of all the servicemen and women who had the courage to come forward and tell their stories, simply because, as they told us time and time again, they never wanted another soldier to go through what they had experienced. Thank you so much.
Some University of Oregon students saw the news coverage about two high school football players in Steubenville, Ohio, who were convicted of raping a 16-year-old girl. They saw the coverage, and for example, a CNN reporter said, for instance, that it was, quote, incredibly difficult to watch star football players have their lives fall apart. And the Oregon students thought it was outrageous that sympathy would go to the boys in the case and not the 16-year-old girl who'd been raped. And so they shot a 26-second video, and they addressed it to the Steubenville rapists or any rapists out there. It got 1 million views in 48 hours. That figure doubled and then tripled. Now it stands at 7.6 million people. For making a clear statement about rape culture and sharing it with the world by social media and spurring a national conversation online, a needed response is the first viral video to receive a Peabody Award. What I have said about the video is actually longer than the video itself. Here is the entire video.
Hey bros, check who passed out on the couch. Guess what I'm gonna do to her? Real men treat women with respect.
Accepting the Peabody Award, producer Samantha Stendel.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to start by thanking our families and the people at Upworthy for supporting us. Also, Kelsey, Aaron, and Justin, I could not have done this without you. Sexual assault is a very difficult topic to address, and yet it's so important to talk about it. As a woman on a college campus, this issue hits home for me especially. And I'm so thankful that the Peabody Board is not only willing to acknowledge this issue, but also foster a conversation around it. I would like to accept this award on behalf of survivors of sexual assault. We believe you, we support you, and we know that you deserve respect. Thank you.
ESPN has ties to the NFL, but that didn't stop it from blasting the league's handling of its concussion crisis. The most devastating segment in this series questioned the league's reliance on Dr. Elliot J. Pellman. Pellman, in the coverage, comes across as this professional apologist, as quick to discredit CTE studies, and quick to send concussed players back into the action.
Despite his controversial past, Elliot Pellman is still a medical advisor to the NFL. And part of his job, according to one current team doctor, is making sure teams follow proper procedures when players leave games with concussions.
What do you make of the fact that he still has a job with the NFL?
It's really hard to fathom.
He shouldn't be there. He shouldn't be there.
In light of everything that we've discovered, he should not be there because he is not the most qualified guy to make those decisions.
Here to accept the Peabody Award is Dwayne Bray, Senior Coordinating Producer.
We can't count. They tell us to bring no more than 4 people up, but we brought more than that. ESPN is having a big impact with its journalism, as you can see by winning the Peabody. ESPN has a huge audience. On Mother's Day, I was in Cleveland, Ohio, and I was at a local store where this guy in this sleeveless shirt with these big muscles who looked like he had just come home from incarceration started walking towards me. And actually, I was kind of scared. I had on a shirt that said ESPN. This man looked at me and he just started saying, dun-a-dun, dun-a-dun. But we try to use that impact for more than just highlights and game coverage and discussion shows. We try to use that impact for serious journalism, as this award attests, and as these great producer reporters and some editors out there helped us win. I'd just like to thank a few people really quickly. First, our host, Bob Lee, who does a terrific job with his interviewing skills on Outside the Lines. I also like to thank UGA and the jurors for looking at sports journalism as a serious endeavor, because it affects so many of our kids, as these stories we've done shows that these brain injuries are not only affecting NFL players, but the more than 3 million youth football players. Lastly, I'd like to thank 2 special men from ESPN who's out in the audience today, John Walsh and Vince Doria. They're 2 of our executives who more than 20 years ago decided that ESPN wasn't just going to be the toy department and that it was going to do serious journalism. Thank you, Vince and John.
Frontline also wins a Peabody for coverage of the NFL and concussions. The project was a collaboration with ESPN for 15 months before the ESPN pulled out. As the New York Times reported, ESPN pulled out a week after the NFL commissioner met with the heads of ESPN and expressed his displeasure with the Frontline project. The Frontline documentary is a 2-hour indictment of the NFL for concealing the link between football-related head injuries and brain disorders for decades.
At the bottom of page 32, there was dementia. And they had asked players or their representatives, their wives, have you been diagnosed by a physician as having Alzheimer's, dementia, or any other memory-related disease?
What it showed was that former NFL players seemed to have memory-related disorders at a much, much higher rate than people in the regular community.
Michael Kirk, producer, director, and co-writer, will accept the Peabody Award.
The Faineroos are back. Our usual obstacles are the White House, the CIA, the FBI. Last week it was the National Security Agency in the United States of Secrets. In the case of League of Denial, the National Football League was in some ways especially formidable. Asking the NFL the hard question about their business, what did they know and when did they know about the devastating invisible toll the game was taking on the brains of their employees, some of our favorite sports heroes, was our mandate. And the NFL would be damned if they would answer those questions. In fact, they did what they could to try to stop us. But the people up here were determined to tell the story. Let me introduce them to you. Jim Gilmore is my long-standing co-producing partner and the reporter on this film. Our other partner, supremely clear-headed Mike Weiser, couldn't be here today, nor could Phil Bennett, the driving force behind the creation of the project. Steve Faineroo and his brother Mark Faineroo-Wada, the authors of the book League of Denial, were generous and thorough collaborators who stuck with us when the going got rough. The talented editor was Steve Audette. Nothing stopped Steve.
Thank you.
Coordinating producer Colette Nehru's Hannah is our secret weapon, as is associate producer Lauren Izell. And here's a special plug, a UGA graduate who I met here in 2007, picking up the award, pursued her, hired her, and she's fabulous. And then, of course, there's David Fanning, the creator and executive producer of Frontline, his trusted deputy executive producer, Rainey Aronson, and our journalistic North Star, who's out there in the audience somewhere, Lewis Wiley. When the going got rough and tough, so did they, but in the most elegant way. Thank you, Dave. Before ESPN abandoned us, under some pressure from the National Football League, as Ira said, we came to know and value the journalists who work there in a special unit. That's Dwayne Bray, Chris Buckle, and others. We are comrades in arms with you guys, no matter what happened with the film. That special unit continues to be special. One other thing, I'd just like to thank our partners, wives, and husbands, Megan, Callie, Monica, Karen, John, Denny, Nicole, Maureen, and to my wife and first audience, Natasha, our love, respect, and gratitude. And thanks finally to PBS, and you stuck with us. Thank you very much. No other network would have supported this program the way we wanted to tell this story. And to WGBH in Boston, the best television station in America. Thank you very much.
Mea Maxima Culpa, Silence in the House of God, exposes the crimes of a Milwaukee priest who sexually assaulted over 200 deaf children. It also looks at the way the Catholic Church has covered up those incidents around the world.
Inside the cloistered walls of the Vatican lie voluminous records of worldwide sexual abuse in the priesthood, centralized in the secret archives of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith.
It is the century-old history of the Catholic Church. We have documents from councils in Spain in the 4th century after Christ, in which there is written something about sex abuse with children. So it is 1,700 years that the Church is dealing about this.
Peabody Award goes to producer, director, and writer Alex Gibney.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the Peabody Awards. For me, this was a very difficult story to tell, but it's really, at essence, a story of heroes. First, the heroes who helped to make the film. Lori Goodstein, the reporter from the New York Times, who first dug into this story. The incomparable Sheila Nevins from HBO, and HBO was so terrific throughout this whole process. Sarah Bernstein from HBO, and then the team. Kristen Vario, Sloan Clevin, magnificent editor, Allie Johns, executive producer Lori Singer, Todd Wider, and Jed Wider. But the real heroes of this story are a small group of deaf men from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Voiceless, but who managed to make their voices heard so loudly that they rattled the walls of the Vatican. This is dedicated to them. I don't speak Danish, but in the words of our heroes, I will say this. Thank you, Deaf Power. Thank you very much.
This final group of honorees is all about the future and where we're going. The sci-fi thriller Orphan Black is about clones. Tatiana Maslany plays all the different clones, and if you have not seen this show, to give you a sense of how hard her job is, sometimes she's playing like 2 or 3 different people in the same scene, or even harder because the plot is like this big noir thing and it's super complicated. Sometimes she'll play one of the clones like Allison, who's a soccer mom, as Allison is impersonating a different clone, Sarah, who is like a punk, grifter, con artist. So she has to do Sarah as the soccer mom would perform Sarah, if that makes any sense. I saw on Reddit, somebody said there should just be a special Oscar for that. The story raises all kinds of questions about what part of you is in your genetics and what part is nature, nurture, and bioethics and genetic research, and about science versus religion. For its original take on cloning, amazing performances, and plot twists, Orphan Black receives a Peabody Award.
Look, can you just tell me what the hell this is?
Don't tell her anything.
Short answer, no. How are we all related?
We're not.
Well, we are, by nature. She's referring to nurture.
Just give us the briefcase that you got from the German.
Give me some answers.
You don't rate answers.
Allison.
Fine, she wants in. We're clones. We're someone's experiment and they're killing us off. Is that helpful?
Directors and co-creators John Fawcett and Graham Manson will receive the Peabody Award.
Well, thank you very much for what we will forever call our crazy little clone show. I think this is a really tremendous honor for us. And so, on behalf of everyone at Orphan Black, including Tatiana Maslany, Jordan Gavaris, the rest of our amazing cast, our incredibly hardworking crew, thanks to the Peabody Board so much for this honor. Also, on behalf of John and myself, and also in Canadian, we'd like to say merci beaucoup to the board for honoring genre television. For though we are a clone conspiracy drama thriller, it's our sci-fi platform that allows us to tell our stories that matter and explore issues of nature, nurture, self-identity, bioethics, and genetic engineering. Important stories. Thank you.
We also have like unbelievable partners at Temple Street, including David Fortier and Ivan Schneeberg and John Young. And we have these great networks, BBC America and our Canadian network, the Space Channel. They've allowed us this freedom to, for Graham and I to create this, this story, and so we thank you. Thanks.
The Returned is a French miniseries about what would really happen. What would really happen if the dead, including casualties of a terrible bus accident, began to reappear unaged to the families and friends who are still mourning them and sometimes still arguing over how to memorialize them.
Claire. Elle est dans la salle de bain. Je veux la voir. Écoute.
Léna.
Non, c'est moi. Eh, mais ça va pas. Mais papa, sors.
The president of Sundance TV, Sarah Barnett, will accept the Peabody Award.
It's such an honor to be in such extraordinary company. Fabrice Gobert, the creator, and Oekor, the producers of The Returned, couldn't be here today. I entirely accept this award on their behalf, and we salute their exquisite storytelling genius. I'd also like to thank my bosses who, when confronted with the unorthodox notion of an entirely subtitled series in prime time, responded not just with equanimity, but actually embraced this project with enthusiasm. Thank you, Ed and Josh. And finally, I'd like to say to the Peabody Board, inevitably in rather mangled French, nous sommes très heureux. Merci beaucoup.
This next award goes to my coworkers at This American Life for the shows that we did on Harper High School, where 29 students were shot in one school year. 8 of those students died. As we say in the show, if that happened in a white suburban school out in the suburbs, you know, we would all know the names of that school. We sent 3 reporters into the school for 5 months to dedicate. We sent 3 reporters into the school over 5 months to document what the teachers and students were going through and what they knew about living with this kind of violence that the rest of us don't. Like, here's one of the guidance counselors talking to this kid, Devante, who accidentally shot and killed his younger brother, and nobody in his family talks about it. He hasn't been dealing with his feelings about it, and the counselors just keep trying to get him to open up about it.
What you do at night to help you, though?
To go to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
I take some NyQuil.
You still taking NyQuil?
Man, I take it on a regular basis. Because I need to go to sleep, man.
So what happens if you don't take the NyQuil?
I don't go to sleep.
Can I ask you a question? What are the thoughts that you have when you get ready to go to sleep?
Man.
You having some kind of thoughts that you're trying to escape, so that
I
way.
just be up thinking about stuff.
What? One thought that you be thinking about.
The one my brother, I be thinking about a lot of stuff.
Singing about his brother, he says. Accepting the Peabody is our show's senior producer, Julie Snyder. Hi, guys.
So thank you so much, and thank you to the Peabody Board and to the University of Georgia for this honor. And Ira Glass, who's your host and our boss, gave us one piece of advice for this speech, and he had said, don't be boring and don't spend your time just thanking the team. So I feel like that gives you a small window into what it's like to have him as your boss. But I can't help myself to thank the team because it really is a fantastic team. And we have This American Life producer Robin Semyon, Chicago Public Radio reporter Linda Lutton, This American Life producer and reporter Ben Calhoun, and Alex Kotlowitz. And they were an amazing reporting team. But we mainly really want to thank Harper High School in Chicago, because I think prior to going in and reporting at Harper, we had heard a lot about shootings and violence in urban areas, and a lot of times it's termed gang-related. And I think that the idea of gang-related a lot of times implies a certain logic or order. At the very least, it sort of implies like kind of playing with fire, or you must have done something to deserve it. And I think it was the staff and students at Harper High School in Chicago's Englewood neighborhood that explained to us that the violence, gang-related or however you want to term it, doesn't have a logic to it and doesn't have an order to it, and is certainly just much, much sadder than something like that implies. And it felt like, especially when we were doing the story, there was kind of a national debate about guns and violence in the country, and I think we needed to listen to Harper High School and the staff and students there to have them explain to us that issue in a way that they understood it way more than any of us could ever possibly understand what guns and violence means. So we wanted to thank Harper for sharing their stories with us, and Chicago Public Schools for letting us come in and kind of explain the issue in a way that went beyond just 2 people shot at an area park. It appears to be gang-related. And then last, we want to thank our home station, WBEZ Chicago, and the entire staff of This American Life for kind of shouldering the burden of the regular radio show while we went MIA for a while and got this off the air. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Washington Metropolitan High School, which people call DC Met, has all the problems of any city high school. They have truancy and teen pregnancy and homelessness and violent crime and low standardized test scores. PBS spent an entire school year filming there, and the result is surprisingly optimistic.
The DC cast is important because it outlines the basic skills that a student should have. No one wants to be a 10th grader who can't read. No one wants to be a 9th grader who can't complete basic algebraic skills. Aside from the fact that the DC cast will put our school in a specific box or our scorecard will read a specific way, at the end of the day, it's a set of skills that we want the students to have. It's a set of skills that the students need for their life. This is our job, but it's their life.
Here to accept the Peabody Award is former DC Met student and graduating senior Rufus McDowney.
Wow, thank you. 2 years ago, I was one of the students followed by DC Met and the cameraman who filmed it. I had no idea then the magnitude of the project I was asked to be a part of. These filmmakers was asking to film my platform and share my perspective on some of the challenges and triumphs me and my peers face. I cannot tell you how powerful it was for me to remain stoic in the face of adversity. For those that haven't seen the film yet, like many students, I was struggling with negative peer influences and distractions. My mother, a strong motivator and my greatest supporter, passed away after a long battle with cancer. Subsequently, I was relocated because I had nowhere else to go. Coming from DC, me and my peers are often looked at as a statistic. We're told that we'll never be this or we will never do that just because of where we come from. This film gave us a voice. They let us tell our story. And this award says you heard us, that you believe in us and what we can do. Out of thousands of important subjects from around the world, this is just a tremendous honor. If you saw the series, you know that when it ends, the question of what happens in my life next is very much unanswered. Well, I'm happy to tell you all today that come this time next month, I'll be an American high school graduate, and come fall, more importantly, a college freshman. I feel privileged to accept this award on the behalf of myself and the staff of students of DC Met that opened their lives to this project, and on the behalf of the students all over the country struggling. It says to us that our views and our stories can have an impact. I want to thank PBS and the Ford Foundation, the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, Ms. Pat Harrison, and of course, a special thanks to the National Black Programming Consortium, Alexis Agary, Brittany Clemens, Adam Lingo, Carol Slacken, Leslie Norman, Brett Gardner, Garland McLaurin, and Jackie Jones. Thank you. Thank you, University of Georgia and the Peabody Awards.
We made it. 46 awards. Congratulations to all the honorees. Lots of the Peabody awardees are programs that try to inspire people to think critically. Pivot TV, which is broadcasting these awards, encourages everybody to do that with the media they consume. More about that at pivottv.com/eyes. Thanks so much, everybody.